Hello again everybody, and welcome to a new campaign flown in the Su-25 Frogfoot. It's a Flaming Cliffs 3 aircraft in DCS world, and it's an odd place for me to be starting a campaign. I usually go into a campaign description and mission briefing right off the bat, but I want to get this one into the air and show the aircraft in action so you'll see what you're in store for as we get going in the missions. And also it's going to be sort of a learn as you fly campaign for me. I usually learn aircraft by doing what I do during the test flight series, but with this aircraft, the systems aren't modeled that much detail, so I just really need to take this up once, learn how to employ the weaponry, and I think I'll be ready to tackle that campaign. And I chose this aircraft specifically because it doesn't have all those systems. I don't have a radar, I don't have the targeting pod to worry about, so I can be outside the aircraft looking around and doing this visually. Something that you can really get out of the habit of doing if you're presented with a whole lot of systems to manage. So I'll tell you what, let me go ahead and taxi, take off, get out to the range. I have a couple of aircraft I'm going to shoot down real quick, employ some of this weaponry you see out there on the wing, and then we'll get back into the campaign description and get into the first mission. So I'll be right back. Okay, and we're approaching the runway, and we'll turn to the left and get lined up and ready for takeoff. And you're going to see at the top right of your screen throughout a lot of the missions a program called TAC View running. That's going to provide you, the viewer, with situational awareness as far as what's going on around me. You'll be able to see a lot of stuff up there that I don't see until way after the fact when I'm cutting these videos together. So it won't just be me in the cockpit. You'll be able to see what all's going around me and be able to really second guess some of my decisions based on what you do see. So, okay, I'm lined up on the runway right now. I've got my flaps down and all engine instruments are looking as expected. Okay, good temperatures. Let me go ahead and run them up with the brakes held. Okay, at about 70%, I'm going to release the brakes. Advance throttles to full. We'll get this aircraft airborne. I want to rotate about 220 kilometers per hour. I have a heavy aircraft with all this fuel and all these weapons, and I'll just fly it off the runway at that airspeed. Okay, so I'm coming up through 175, 190, 200, 210. Let's go ahead and rotate and see if we can get this aircraft airborne. And okay, airborne. Gear up. Now wait until I have a little bit more climb to get the flaps up, just so that I don't lose a whole lot of lift. Okay, flaps up. And number 2 should be taxiing into position and getting airborne right behind me. So I'm going to navigate out to the range, take out these 2 aircraft that I can see out there in the distance, and I'll be right back. Okay, and we're coming into position. I've got my range targets out here to my left. That means that my drone aircraft are circling out here. I've got some C-101, they're Spanish trainer aircraft. The flyable version of these aircraft are actually due to be released today. I'm waiting anxiously on that to happen. But to call up my R-60 air-to-air missiles, I'm going to hit keyboard number 6, and then I'm going to maneuver to put the reticule over the target, get a lock, and then fire. Okay, there's the lock. Okay, missile away. And there we go, he's dispensing flare, and got him anyway. Okay, good hit on that one. I've got one more around here to my left. I'll come around and line up on him as well and take him out. Now, the Su-25 is not an air-to-air aircraft by any means, but as I found out during an A-10 mission that I recently flew, it can hold its own if something does get in close with it, and it does happen to blunder its way in behind it. I just want to be ready for that eventuality if I do happen to find myself in that situation, but for the most part, I'm going to turn and run if I get into kind of an air-to-air engagement. Well, this is against something comparable opponent, like maybe an A-10 in the air-to-air realm, where I could hold my own, I think, in the Su-25. Okay, and for air-to-ground, I'll start out with this rocket pod that I have out there on my outboard air-to-ground stations. I'll select keyboard number 7 to bring up the aiming reticule, and I'll roll in on the target. So let's pick some targets out here, smaller targets, and see what we can do with these rockets. Now, I'm not going to expect pinpoint accuracy out of any rocket attack. These are just here to suppress the enemy and maybe hopefully get a good lucky shot in on something. And let me see if I can estimate the range that I need to effectively use these from. Okay, those actually fell right on target, so I think that was a good range initially to go with. Okay, that'll be a little bit long. Okay, this should be very effective. Got some good hits on that, and that seems to be working just fine. Okay, now let me switch over to my cluster bombs. They're just inboard of the rocket pod. Okay, so coming back into the target area, I'm going to go for that same little group of vehicles down there, and with these cluster bombs, I want to do this from a high enough altitude that they have time to dispense and spread out over a wide area. So laser rangefinder on. Okay, rolling in. I'm just looking for that reticule to come into the bottom of the HUD. Or I should say the gun sight. Okay, there's the reticle. We just release right there in amongst them. Pull out of this dive. And see what kind of an effect we get here. Okay, yeah, good dispersion. I know that I need to go a little bit higher than that on the release if I want them to spread out over a wider area. But okay, that's good enough. And now let's bring up these big laser-guided rockets I have there under my inboard wing station. And I've already fired a couple of them off. What I'm trying to do is find a good max effective range, or at least a range where I can reliably get centered on the area that I want to hit on the ground. So what I'm going to do is enable my laser rangefinder and then use the reticule to slew over to the target, and the weapon is going to guide on the location that the reticule is pointing at on the ground. So, okay, laser rangefinder active. Okay, now let me try to slew it over to a good target here. Easier said than done. It's so twitchy at this range. Okay, let me try that again. Unlock. Okay, that's about as good as I'm going to get. Okay, missile away. And there we go. It just follows just tracks on the laser beam that is right out there where the reticle is pointing. Let's see what kind of a good hit we get on this. Okay, not too bad. So that's going to take a little bit of getting used to. It's not a fire and forget weapon. I don't know how far off bore side I can go with this, but I'm left there just sort of tracking the target all the way in. So that's vastly different from the AGM-65 experience I'm used to. So let me go ahead and get this onto the ground, and we'll go ahead and get into the mission briefing and the campaign overview. So I'll be right back. And now the campaign description. And the campaign is, of course, Cold War Warrior, flown in the Su-25. It's one of the campaigns that comes with Flaming Cliffs 3. And I'm going to go through the campaign description here, and feel free to skip this if you're just not interested. I think it's important, especially at the beginning of a very long campaign like this, to understand what's going on. So I'm going to read it, if not for anybody else's benefit, for my own. The fall of the Berlin Wall, 9 November 1989, should have marked the beginning of a new era of peace. It brought the world to the brink of disaster. In the night of the fall of the Berlin Wall, the armies of the group of Soviet forces in Germany left their garrisons throughout the German Democratic Republic in order to contain the beginnings of the East German Revolution. Recognizing these movements, NATO command came to the fatal conclusion, massing the forces for the invasion of Western Europe. In the morning of 10 November, NATO executed Plan Loaded Spring, a preemptive strike against the Soviet buildup in East Germany. 8 NATO corps swiftly crossed the inner German border and engaged the group of Soviet forces in Germany. The Soviet armies, expecting a national security operation, were completely surprised and caught unprepared. In a 3 days long battle of unprecedented scale and intensity, the GSFG was outrightly annihilated. Surprisingly, NATO suffered only marginal losses. Following the disaster in East Germany, the Red Army generals revolted against the government of Mikhail Gorbachev and ordered the mobilization of all military reserves. It would only be a question of time before the Soviet divisions of the Far East would sweep across Europe and avenge the humiliation of the Red Army. NATO command could only see one resort, an all-out offensive into the Soviet Union in order to disrupt the reformation of the Soviet Army. 20th November 1989, the victorious and reinforced forces of NATO began their drive across the plains of Eastern Europe, having been granted free access by the mutinied armies of Poland and Czechoslovakia and into the heartland of the Soviet Union. Mutually assured destruction worked all too well. As long as either side has a real hope to win the war, no one dares unleash the storm of nuclear fire. Once more, the sons of Russia and their Soviet brothers must take up arms to defend their motherland. So, my goodness, that's an aggressive and decisive NATO that we have on our hands here. And it's going to be interesting flying it from the red side. That's something that I generally don't do. So let's at the very least go through the overview of the first mission. I'll have to come back next time. I'm running out of time in this video to do the detailed planning and start to execute the mission and really get this campaign going. But we're going to get a lot more background in this first mission overview. And you can see from the map that NATO has pushed pretty decent ways into the east, almost to Moscow, and you can see them coming south into the Caucasus, into our area. We're going to be down here around this furthest southernmost advance of the NATO forces, trying to stem this attack. Now, the situation is that we're up to the 20th of December 1989. The NATO offensive has reached deep into the Soviet Union. The 1st Dutch Corps has taken Leningrad, the US 5th and 7th Corps are advancing on Moscow, and the Belgian 1st Corps reached Stalingrad. 4 days ago, the West German 3rd Corps crossed the Don River at Rostov and turned south towards the Caucasus. Our armies and the Western Soviet Union have taken disastrous losses and were only barely able to keep a continuous front line. Fresh reserve armies out of the Central Soviet Union, Afghanistan, and the Far East are still 1 to 2 weeks away, so it's a bleak start for our side in this campaign. Southern Front situation. The West German 3rd Corps consists of the 2nd Panzer Grenadier Division, the 5th Panzer Division, and the 12th Panzer Division. It is supported by Jagdschwager 71 of the Luftwaffe equipped with F-4F Phantoms. The 5th Panzer Division is advancing against Krasnodar along the Rostov-Krasnodar Highway. The 12th Panzer Division is advancing against Maykop, and the 2nd Panzer Grenadier Division is being held back in reserve. During the Battle of East Germany and their advance across Eastern Europe, the NATO forces have heavily depended on their Air Force and Army aviation units to keep losses on the ground low. Those assets are now mostly attrited, but even without the heavy air support, the West German 3rd Corps poses a formidable threat. So that's actually good news, not much of an air threat, initially at least, to worry about, just those F-4s that were with the Luftwaffe. The defense of the Southern Front has been assigned to the 6th Guards Tank Army, which could escape destruction in the Ukraine by sacrificing the 75th Guards Tank Division at Rostov. This action permitted the 16th and 42nd Guards Tank Divisions to retreat in good order and set up a defensive of the invaluable oil fields of Krasnodar and Maykop. The 6th Guards Tank Army receives air support by the 5th Air Army, which includes Su-25s of the 290th Independent Attack Regiment. I believe that would be us. But let me pause right here and get to the detailed planning and the execution of the mission starting in the next video and really get this campaign rolling. So I hope you are enjoying this so far. It's going to be a lot of fun over the long haul to put this one together. And if you are enjoying it, and if you do enjoy my videos, please just consider subscribing to the channel and definitely leave a like, especially on the first video of a long series like this. It really does help out a lot with search results and helping grow the channel and get the word out about the kind of stuff that I do. So thanks again for watching, and I will see you next time.